Hey guys, Mr. Hyatt here. This is the second half of the Chapter 21 lecture that we started yesterday. So we're looking at Chapter 21, Section 2, how should we deal with solid waste? Just kind of some vocab type of things here. Waste management, kind of the strategy behind that is let's manage our waste, let's reduce the harm, let's handle our waste better. But not necessarily let's reduce our waste. That falls under waste reduction. Certainly you want to do both. You want to use less. You want to focus on reduce, reuse, recycle, compost if at all possible. And again, hopefully you're rolling that in with waste management where you're handling your waste that you are creating a little bit better. And that's sort of where integrated waste management comes in. Should sound a lot like integrated pest management. Same kind of idea. Here's kind of an overview. Let me skip to the next slide so we can see the text a little bit better. So kind of what we're looking at is the fact that we have to take a multifaceted approach here. So if we look at these materials, plastics, glass, metals, papers, those are things that we tend to think about putting in our recycling. Hopefully we can recycle those back to the manufacturers and we can create either new bottles, new plastic, new metal, new paper, or we can create something completely different. Food and yard waste, hopefully we can compost that, turn it into fertilizer. Hazardous waste, we're going to have to manage a different way. Remaining mixed waste is going to have to go to the landfill, maybe the incinerator if we're lucky enough to live in a place where we can incinerate. But basically, it's a multifaceted approach. We don't just do one thing with our waste, which most of us don't already. But probably most of us could do a little bit better with recycling, and most of us could do a little bit better with composting. Most of us could do a lot better with our hazardous waste. Kind of an overview of integrated waste management. Make sure you check this section out in your book. Basically, the moral to the story here is we want to prevent primary pollution and waste prevention first. So those are things that are going to be immediately damaging to the environment. Then after we focus on those things, then we want to focus on secondary pollution. So things like acid rain that we've talked about. And then finally, what do we do with the waste that we have to create? What can we do with it? So basically, we want to take the worst stuff out and do something with it. Then we want to take the next worst stuff out and do something with that. And then whatever we have to trash, whatever we have to just send to the dump, we can't recycle it in any way. How can we reduce the impact that that's having on the environment? So how can we cut solid waste to 3 buzzwords you guys have heard your whole lives? Reduce, reuse, recycle. There are 6 strategies to that. Your book talks about each of these. Redesign manufacturing processes. So make stuff more responsibly. Be better in industry. Be better in agriculture. Be better in mining. Things along those lines. We looked at the percentage of solid waste that comes from those 3 industries yesterday, and it was huge. 2, develop products that you can fix. Get rid of the throwaway society. Buy a chair that's made of wood so that you can fix it when it breaks instead of buying a plastic chair that you have to throw away when it breaks. Eliminate or reduce unnecessary packaging. I talked about that yesterday. It's crazy how much plastic surrounds a plastic toy. Use a fee per bag waste collection system, so you have to pay a certain amount for every bag that you put out at the curb rather than like my trash service, I pay a certain amount every month and I get to put out up to 10 bags a week. Well, if I had to pay for every single bag I put out there, I might be more mindful in what I'm putting out at the curb. 5, we talked a little bit about cradle to grave. That certainly helps. And then restructure urban transportation systems, again, so that we can have mass transit. Think about the waste that is in cars, the amount of stuff that gets thrown into a junkyard, or the amount of oil that we have to recycle from changing our oil, and oil filters and air filters and all those different types of things. our waste that comes off of our cars. So if we reduce the number of cars on the road, we reduce the amount of waste coming from those cars. Moving on to section 3, why is reusing and recycling so important? Well, because it's going to cut down on the impact that creating these things has on the environment. Again, think back to the percent of waste that comes from industry. If we can reuse things, then we don't have to start from scratch every time. We can use things like rechargeable batteries. I can use a rechargeable battery maybe 10 times, as opposed to using a battery, throwing it away, using a battery, throwing it away. The downside of reuse in developing countries, that second bullet point there, if you're salvaging things, if you're going through junk to get things that you can use, you're going to be exposed to a lot of toxins. You're going to be exposed to a lot of metals and things that other people are throwing away for a reason. We do a lot of reusing today. I know my wife sells and buys a lot of things through Facebook groups, and we do things like Craigslist and yard sales and Goodwill and things like that. So those are all examples of reuse. Your book talks about using refillable containers. That's kind of like, we talked about that with BPA a little bit. Reusing drink bottles that are made of PET. You can use that over and over again as opposed to using a plastic water bottle, something along those lines. So I think that pretty much makes sense. I know that I'm watching a TV show that's a reality show on MTV where somebody was all excited to get a jar of peanut butter because he could eat the peanut butter, and then when it was done, he could use the jar as a cup, as like to carry water. So again, that's just kind of a basic example of reuse. And then paper, plastic, and reusable cloth bags. Paper and plastic both have advantages. They're cheap, they're easy to make, things like that. They're also both harmful to the environment. Whether we're cutting down trees or we're going through all the petroleum mining that it takes to make plastic bags, they both harm the environment. Your book talks specifically about, like in Central Africa, the the buildup of plastic bags that have been thrown away. There's a lot of information out there on the internet about the harmful effects of plastic grocery bags. And reusable cloth bags can be made from sustainably harvested fabrics. You're not making an impact on the environment every time you take your cloth bag. So it's something that potentially could help help the environment significantly. Here's kind of some examples of small things that you could do at home to reuse. You know, your book loves those. 2 types of recycling. So there's closed loop, that's primary recycling, and then there's secondary recycling. So primary recycling, you're going to recycle aluminum cans and you're going to turn them into aluminum cans. Secondary recycling, you're going to recycle something and turn it into something else. You're going to recycle tires and make it into something else. You're going to recycle paper and make it into something else. Types of waste that can be recycled: a pre-consumer, post-consumer, that's kind of vocab. Pre-consumer stuff is going to be stuff that happens at the warehouse, the factory, things along those lines. Post-consumer, that's what I do. I recycle the stuff after I use it. But some issues: do the items actually get recycled? Just because I put it in my recycling can doesn't mean that it's not going straight to the dump. A few years ago, there was a big investigation because a company here in central Indiana was reporting to be recycling, but their recycling trucks were going to the same place that their trash trucks were going, and so they weren't ultimately recycling. They were charging people extra because they were quote-unquote recycling, and they weren't. And what are the numbers? How significant of a dent are we actually making? It's hard to estimate. Make sure you see this section in your book because there are some details there that I just don't have time to get into. Another kind of strategy is you can either mix or separate your wastes for recycling. So there's something called single stream recycling where your recycling can gets dumped onto a conveyor belt and the waste gets fed through a series of burners. Some stuff melts off at a lower temperature and they collect it. Then the next range, the next temperature, melts off some other stuff. And as you go, fires get hotter and the different materials get pulled out. They get melted down. That's not going to work for everything. But for some things it can. That's how my recycling works. I have single stream. My mother-in-law does not. She has to separate all of her recyclables and take them to a plant and put the cans with the cans, the paper with the paper, the cardboard with the cardboard, the plastic with the plastic, and so on. Source separation is the idea that I'm going to separate it and pay as I throw. It's kind of like what I was talking about with my mother-in-law. I pay to do that. I might pay 10 cents to recycle this. I might pay 10 cents to recycle that. Or it could be a fee per bag again, where I get charged $1 for a whole trash bag of recycling. Again, not necessarily unique to single stream, or could be mixed bags or separated bags is what I'm trying to get at. Another way that we can separate the solid waste, we can compost. So individual and municipal compost, that's going to be, I do a compost pile in my backyard. Municipal, we compost as a community. So that could be where my neighborhood association gets together and has a compost pile, or it could be where the folks at the landfill separate out the things that can be composted, and they do it kind of on the site of the landfill. A lot of benefits. There are some drawbacks. Sometimes you're going to get things cycled into the ecosystem that maybe shouldn't be, but you're basically creating fertilizer from organic matter. So that helps with reducing inorganic fertilizers and things along those lines. Make sure you check out the San Francisco example and the Edmonton examples in your textbook. Those are really good case studies on recycling. I'm going to skip forward a couple of slides here. Plastics especially, we've talked about that yesterday. It's really important that we recycle our plastics because of the fact that most of our plastics are made from resins of oil and natural gas. So only 4% of our plastic is currently recycled, so that's not good. We have to be better. About that. Your book mentions bioplastics. Bioplastics are definitely not a new concept, but it's the idea that we can make plastic from things other than oil. We can use corn to make plastic. We can make soy or sugarcane to make plastic, and those things are biodegradable. So they're less harmful to the environment. Instead of 400 years to break down, maybe we're talking about 4 months to break down. Now we want it to be stable enough to store our Coke until it goes bad, but we don't need it to stick around for 400 years. The key to making bioplastics happen is to find catalysts that speed up the reactions, because it takes a pretty quick reaction rate to build plastics from living matter. Other sources that we could use: switchgrass and chicken feathers. Some garbage can be condensed down to form plastic. CO2 from coal burning power plants. Holy cow! Now we can capture that CO2 and we can do something with it. Recycling definitely has advantages and disadvantages. Advantages, we're reducing our output, so we're taking less out of the earth. We are lessening the burden on poor communities that have to harvest things like coal and things like natural gas and things like petroleum, things along those lines. But it has disadvantages as well. Like I talked about, if we compost, sometimes we're going to put inorganic matter back into the soil, and that's not a good thing. So this slide talks about some of those advantages and disadvantages. Sometimes it's inconvenient. Sometimes the cost is cumbersome. So there definitely are some obstacles and some limitations to recycling. In the next video, we will finish up with Chapter 21.